Welcome to the Disrupt Your Career podcast, brought to you by Claire Harbour
and Antoine Tirant. We're passionate about helping everyone find fulfillment in their work life.
We believe that big, messy, uncharted career changes are inevitable, and it's up to you to decide.
Will you take control and disrupt, or allow yourself to be disrupted?
We wrote the book about it, and now we share here our conversations with other thinkers in this crucial area.
Settle down and get ready to listen to this dose of wisdom.
So, in this edition of the Disrupt Your Career Author Chat, I'm delighted to be welcoming back our friend Tomas Chamorro-Premuzic. He is here to talk about his latest book, which has a beautiful name, Don't Be Yourself, Why Authenticity Is Overrated and What to Do Instead, which is, of course, a mouthful, but known as Don't Be Yourself. And Tomas, thank you for joining me. And perhaps we could start with the really simple question, but there's a rider, why you wrote the book and how.
The pattern over the past 10, 15 years with this sort of like more general audience book has always been the same. I get obsessed, if not fixated, by topics where the mainstream view has become so absurd, so ridiculous, that a scientific or evidence and even commonsensical perspective on the topic is heretic. And that is definitely the case with authenticity. You know, we hear over and over again that if you want to be a great leader, all you have to do is to stop worrying about what people think of you, to just be you. We keep on seeing companies or organizations encouraging young people to bring their whole self to work or even to a job interview. And all of this is at odds with the science of effective interpersonal functioning. So my goal and my wish, my aspiration here, I might be naive, but it's to close the gap between science and popular views, which actually influence HR and leadership practices around authenticity.
Well, that is where you've always been brilliant, making the complicated science digestible and make sense. We're very grateful to you as a wider audience for doing that. Thinking about the how, you have a million jobs and you do so many different things in so many different places with bravura everywhere you go. How do you fit in writing a book with all of that?
My day has 24 hours, just like anybody else's. A lot of people tell me, wow, you're so prolific, so productive, which, you know, it's a nice thing to hear. It's a nice compliment. For me, it's quite surprising because I'm actually very disorganized. I never plan. I'm lucky to have various teams that are very good and whom I work with, and they're full of talented people. And, you know, when you can delegate and you focus on thinking big picture, long-term strategy, and focusing really prioritizing on what decisions are important, then a lot of the execution part should be delegated to talented people in your teams. And that's what I do. Now, the writing specifically comes in bursts, I would say bursts of energy or enthusiasm. So to give you an example, you know, I like to swim in the mornings. I go for a swim. And as I'm swimming, because I can't be connected, ideas come. And then, you know, I might do 40 minutes of swimming. And as soon as I get back home, I write, 15 pages. And that just takes maybe 10, 15 minutes. Then, you leave it for editing on a long flight or on a weekend. So even short books like this one, like Don't Be Yourself, which is about 250 pages or so, it sounds quite easy, but, from the beginning to the end, it's a 3.5-year process. A lot of time, elapsed time where if you had to quantify on average how much time you spend per day, maybe just 6 minutes.
Yeah, that's a nice mathematical analysis of something that seems more priority driven and energy based, but lovely. Well done for sticking it out each time. So if you could share with us some of the key concepts and messages in the book. Obviously, we want our listeners to read it and go and buy it as well, but let's get them salivating.
I guess one key message is that everybody loves authenticity, but not many people understand it. The second one is that it is quite helpful to, well, first acknowledge that you cannot measure in any clear-cut or objective way how authentic somebody is. So, for example, I might have an idea of how authentic I am right now or how authentic you are, but luckily we don't have Neuralink or something in our brains that tells somebody else, oh, Claire is now smiling, but she doesn't actually mean it. She's being fake, right? So there is no objective measure, which, makes managing it, developing it, or selecting leaders on it quite hard. And then on a practical level, actually, the literature and the science splits into two camps. The camp that evaluates subjective authenticity, how authentic I feel, for example, when I'm doing a job. If I feel more authentic, that's good because I'll be happier, more engaged, etc. But doesn't mean I'm actually better at the job or that other people enjoy working with me. And the other one, which matters a lot more, is how authentic you are in the eyes of others. That one is critical. So everybody loves leaders who seem authentic. Trump voters find Donald Trump authentic and Obama inauthentic. Obama voters find Obama authentic, but Trump inauthentic. The point is that every leader and every professional who is in a senior position of power responsibility has learned to act authenticity because their professional self, and you will know this because you're an executive coach, their professional self seems actually very genuine and trustworthy. That doesn't mean that anything goes and that they can indulge in, imposing their unfiltered or uncensored self on others, which doesn't end up well. That's the first part of the book. The second part teaches people how to find the balance between understanding that, on the one hand, their right to express themselves shouldn't override their obligation to others, and how they can navigate this intricate and delicate tension between wanting to express who they think they are and the parts of themselves which they're proud of, but also exercising empathy and caring about others. So in essence, it's actually a very commonsensical book. When people hear this, they're like, there's not much controversial in that, but what's controversial is what people keep on repeating and believing about the authenticity cult.
Indeed. That's a wonderful reminder that it is, in the end, common sense. And we just take the different notions and push them too far or not far enough or whatever it might be and end up confusing the world. Let's get into some case studies or some important stories that you could use to illustrate how things go well when people understand authenticity and get it right as leaders, and maybe some examples of when they don't.
I'm trained as a Freudian psychoanalyst. How things go wrong, then you can reverse engineer it and find a way to do them right. So I'll pick a couple rather than specific case studies. Mary or John were doing this or that, or kind of Trump or Obama. I'm going to generalize to something that is very, very applicable to a lot of leaders. The first is one of the main mantras underpinning the authenticity cult is this notion that you should always, as a leader, be true to your values. Basically, follow your heart no matter what, and never compromise when it comes to your values. Well, actually, as I show in the book, it really depends on what your values are. Should you follow your values if you're a fascist? Probably not. If you're a communist, maybe not either. What if you're a sexist? What if you're a racist? What if you're a narcissist and you have, egotistical values? And by the way, there's a lot of more common examples of people, who kind of fulfill these values. So you should follow your values if those values are pro-social. If not, society and organizations and your team is better off if you actually learn to put them aside and act in a pro-social way. And then, as I show in the book, as a leader, your job is to bring people together, not divide. So oftentimes, even if your values seem okay and are good, like if you're proudly expressing them and you're desperate to say your views on, the Middle East, conflicts, climate change, guns, abortion, politics, etc., you might alienate others. The world is already quite tribal and polarized because we seem to have this cult-like approach to, I'm a leader and I'm going to be true to my values. And if you don't follow me, you're not part of the cult. That's a very immature take on leadership.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. If you wanted to leave the listeners with one beautiful caveat or incitation of some kind that is going to set them off on the right path of their leadership with the right balance of authenticity in their lives this year, what would you tell them?
Well, as I say in my book, authenticity research and work is mostly all footnotes to my dear friend Erminia Ibarra, and I steal proudly from her, and I obviously acknowledge her pioneering work here. But for me, the most beautiful, counterintuitive, but impactful leadership advice or hack that comes from this work, this book, and largely her research is as simple as that. Why limit yourself to your past and present self, which is basically your authentic self, who you naturally are and what comes easily to you and what's in your comfort zone, where you could actually sculpt, create, or design a future self that contains elements of you that haven't been expressed. In essence, leaders are always a work in progress, and the only way to evolve or develop as a leader is to not be bounded or constrained by your current and past self, but create new versions of you. So, that might be the most poetic, romantic, but also important lesson to not just be yourself.
Beautiful. We are indeed all works in progress. And you and I have talked on that topic in depth at other times. But thank you. That's a great reminder for all of us. Keep on creating, keep on sculpting the best version of yourself possible. Thank you so much, Tomas. Let's call it a day there. Wonderful to have you back. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Always happy to chat.
We hope you enjoyed hearing from this month's guest as much as we did.
Do go and check out our work on disrupt-your-career.com and come back soon. Thank you.